All right. Well, good evening, everybody. I'm Sandy Friedman, and I'm going to introduce tonight's speaker. Tonight's topic is on ESG reporting, environment, social, and governance. Our speaker is Warren Gorowitz tonight. And first, a little bit about me. I'm a master instructor with ASCM, and I'm on the advisory board member on the committee of the ASCM Eco-Sustainability Special Interest Group. I've held management positions in various industries and consulting firms, mainly in aerospace, biotech, high-tech, and municipal governments. So tonight I'm privileged to introduce Warren Gorowitz as tonight's distinguished speaker. Warren is currently the Director of Corporate Social Responsibility at Hunter Industries in San Marcos, California, and is also one of our Eco-Sustainability Advisory Board members. Warren is an accomplished and passionate results-driven sustainability executive with extensive experience and substantial success in directing the development and implementation of large-scale corporate social responsibility strategies and programs in the landscape industry. He is a sought-after presenter, public speaker, and expert in outdoor water efficiency and sustainability. Warren is also an instructor at UCLA Extension, where he teaches principles of sustainability and has served as the chair of the Sustainability Common Interest Group of the Irrigation Association, as well as other positions, including past president. Warren has also served as faculty associate in the School of Sustainability at Arizona State University and vice president of sustainability at Ewing Irrigation and Landscape Supply, which is the largest family-owned supplier of landscape and water management products in the country. Warren holds a bachelor's in ornamental horticulture and an executive master's of sustainability leadership from Arizona State University. Please say hello to Warren Gorowitz. Thank you.
Thanks, Sandy. Good evening, everybody. Thanks for joining tonight. Appreciate you making the time. I am going to talk about ESG reporting a little bit and just some housekeeping. If you have questions, feel free to type them in the chat if you'd like. If you want to unmute yourself, you can. This is informal in that perspective because I want to make sure that we can have a discussion if you've got questions. And even some of our other attendees may have some opinions about some of the things I'm going to talk about. And so I want to make this as engaging as possible. So it's not just you sitting and listening to me talk. But I will get started. So here's what I want to go through today. Who is Hunter? We'll talk a little bit about the company that I work for, just to give you a little bit of background. Share with you some information about the variety of different ESG reporting frameworks that are available. Talk about Hunter and our corporate social responsibility commitment. And then I want to review 2 CSR reports, ours, and I've chosen another company in the manufacturing space, and maybe give you a few little tidbits on how to get started, talk a little bit about the importance of keeping data as it relates to when you're doing your ESG or sustainability reporting, and share with you the reporting software that we use, and then share with you some resources and some sustainability educational opportunities in case you're interested in learning more about the sustainability profession. I'll share with you a couple, including some of the ones that Sandy mentioned that I have experience whether being a student in or teaching in. And so a little bit about Hunter, just to give you a little bit about our background. So we are the largest private employer in San Marcos. We have 4 manufacturing plants in Tijuana, Mexico, contract manufacturing around the globe. We've been in business for 42 years. And so when we talk about Hunter and the family of companies, our primary products that you see first on the left are our landscape irrigation and outdoor lighting products. We sell them in over 120 countries, and we focus on water and energy efficient solutions for residential, commercial, and golf course irrigation systems. And we also offer landscape lighting, architectural and facade lighting through our brands FX Luminaire and Lumiscapes. And then Senegar Irrigation is our agricultural irrigation company. So we're focused on solutions for agricultural, horticultural, and industrial applications. That company's been around for 50 years, a somewhat recent acquisition for Hunter. And we sell products for Senegar in over 50 countries worldwide. Hunter Custom Manufacturing is actually a custom innovative manufacturing, molding, and production company that makes a variety of different injection molded and other types of products. We've got about 100 injection molded machines, and we deliver all kinds of interesting finished goods, everything from medical devices to automobile parts to technology pieces to all kinds of anything related to injection molded plastic. And then last but not least is our company Dispensing Dynamics, which focuses on away from home dispensing products for washrooms. So that's paper towel and soap dispensers, air care as well. Again, that was originally a contract manufactured product that we made. And then we ended up acquiring the company back in 2019. Had to think back on that for a second. And so we're going to talk about ESG reporting today. I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about ESG as a whole, because I'm hoping that you had a chance to look through the great information that ASCM put together as part of the introduction to this webinar. And if you have specific questions about ESG, of course, feel free to chime in and we can talk about them. But I really want to focus on the reporting aspect tonight, and recognize that this field is changing, it's evolving, and it's really interesting in the time that I've been in the sustainability part of my career, how fast everything is changing and how fast it's evolving. So I have to a couple little pieces of disclosure for me, I guess, and maybe disclosure sounds really official and scary, but in my career, I've spent my entire time, I've only worked for 2 companies in my career since I've been out of college, but I've worked for 2 private family-owned businesses. So my background and my experience is kind of dealing with sustainability from a private sector standpoint, which is a little different than what's going on in the public sector. And we'll talk about that as I share some information throughout the rest of this presentation as well. And so when you talk about ESG reporting framework, I like to think of it as alphabet soup. And if you look at all the 3 and 4 and 6 and 5 letter acronyms on the left-hand side of the screen, it's kind of a mess in some respects, but it's slowly evolving. And so just a little bit of a recap of the variety of different frameworks that are pretty commonplace these days. First of all, the Global Reporting Index, or GRI, and actually ASCM has a fantastic webinar that the Eco Sustainability Group put together on GRI, that great overview of it, explaining all the different components of it. And so I would encourage you to take a look at that. And really the GRI is really one of the most recognized and internationally recognized reporting standards. CDP is the Carbon Disclosure Project, and it's actually started as a nonprofit charity that really developed a disclosure system globally for investors, companies, cities, states, and regions to manage their environmental impacts, and has scores that show the organizations and stakeholders where they are on the road towards operating within the 1.5 degrees Celsius global warming maximum, which is kind of part of the whole discussion around climate change. And then you have SASB, which is Sustainable Accounting Standards Board, and really they measure and focus on the financial impacts of sustainability, and they've been acquired by the IFRS Foundation. You have TCFD, which is the Task Force on Climate-Related Financial Disclosures. Again, it's focused on reporting on climate-related financial information. And then the Security and Exchange Commission in the US back in March of last year actually proposed some rule changes that would require companies to include certain climate-related disclosures in their registration statements and provide periodic reports about climate-related risks that are often to have a material impact on their business, whether it's results of the operations, financial conditions as well. And they require information that actually is focused on climate-related risks, and would require businesses, and again, this is a proposal, it still hasn't been implemented yet, but they would require businesses to report on their greenhouse gas emissions, which is a very common metric used to assess, companies' exposure and their impact on the environment. And then one that I hadn't heard of before, but until recently was actually the United Nations Guiding Principles Reporting Framework, or UNGPRF. And it's really how companies report on how they respect human rights. And last but not least is the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, developed as part of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, and it was adopted by all United Nations member states in 2015. And they actually have 17 different sustainable development goals, really, which is kind of a call to action for countries, developed and developing, focusing on their impact on everything around sustainability. And so I wanted to also, as I'm talking throughout tonight, see if I can do this right. I put together links to all these websites, so in case you want to go learn more about any of them. So I'm going to drop them in the chat right now. And all right, so you should have links to all the websites of the organizations that I just talked about, just to give you that as a little bit of information if you want to do some more research, and learn more about them as well. And so I want to talk to you about our organization and how we look at sustainability. And really at Hunter, we talk about and we focus around the concept of corporate social responsibility. There's a lot of different ways to talk about this topic. Of course, again, the webinar is focusing on and the title was about ESG reporting. The term ESG is very commonplace for public companies. And so in our instance, we're a private family-owned business, and we've been focusing on and talking about really how we impact the triple bottom line of people, planet, and profit. And so that's what we talk about when it comes to our focus around corporate social responsibility. And I guess the one question is that I always ask is, which one of these is more important? Is it people? Is it the planet? Or is it profit? And usually when I'm talking and doing this kind of a presentation, I usually get some people saying people, some people saying planet, some people saying profit. And you know what? The answer is, you're right. They're really all important. And it's really about finding a balance between all three of those areas. And that this icon on the left-hand side is our kind of corporate social responsibility graphic that we use when we talk about corporate social responsibility and our initiatives and the things that we do as an organization. And we have actually gone through and actually, I'm going to stop first and see if there's any questions before I jump into kind of how we identify our priorities around CSR. Checking to see if there's any questions. I don't see anything in the chat. Looks like we got some audio feedback from somebody. Oh, perfect. Thank you. How about the 5 Ps? Peace and partnership. I haven't heard of that one, Alexander. Yeah, I definitely haven't heard. I have not heard of the 5 Ps before. What are the other 3? Oh, it's from the UN. Okay, got it. Thank you for sharing that information. That's good. That's good information to know. So for us as an organization, we have been focused around corporate social responsibility for over 10 years. And we, a part of the whole journey of sustainability and ESG reporting is determining the things that are important for your organization to focus on. And typically that's done by reaching out and surveying your stakeholders. And so stakeholders in our case are our employees, they're our customers, they're our suppliers, they're nonprofit organizations that we support as part of our, as part of being good corporate citizens in the communities that we live, work, and play in. And so when every 3 years, we actually put out the stakeholder survey. The last one we did was in 2021. Our next one will be next year. And we ask our stakeholders to rank the variety of different material topics to our company and share with us what's important to them to make sure that we're focusing on that. And so from the feedback we get from our stakeholders, we actually determine what areas we're going to focus on as a business. And so the topics specifically, as you see on the screen here, And then we actually set goals and targets on what we want to achieve. And so as you'll see on the side of people, we look at, putting people first kind of as our acronym around that. And so you'll see that we're focused on supporting communities through charitable giving. And we have a goal of that being reflective of $2.5 million a year by 2030 that we're providing to nonprofit organizations in the primary communities where our largest employee populations are. Another focus on the people side is employee development, which is related to employee satisfaction, diversity, equity, and inclusion. We're developing our strategy right now. That's something that is still in development that we'll be able to report on here coming up in our next corporate social responsibility report. And then, of course, employee health and safety is also as well. Question is, what are the subcategories under each of the three parts? Are they standard or are they developed by the company? As far as the subcategories, okay, I understand. So if you're referring to our subcategories that we have here, these are developed by our company. These are things that we determine that were important. Again, listening to the feedback, I think if I'm answering your question, Rahul, correctly, I'm sorry. These are what we heard from our stakeholders are things that are important to us to focus on.
Perfect. Thank you.
No, thanks for the question. I appreciate you asking. And so then we have a focus on responsible supply chain practices, and there's a lot of emphasis around that, which has been really interesting, especially during the pandemic. I mean, the pandemic's had a lot of impact on a lot of our corporate social, or a lot of our progress on our goals, but in a positive and a negative way too. And then, of course, the one that we all talk about often, and most companies are talking about, is how do we reduce our impact on the environment? And so most of that's focused on our greenhouse gas emissions. Again, if you attended the GRI webinar, you'll learn a lot about the variety of different scope emissions. I'm not going to get into that in a lot of detail, other than the fact that, we've set a goal to reduce our scope 1 and scope 2 emissions from our 2019 baseline by 2030 by 50%. I don't have that up on here, but it's by 50% by 2030, and then starting measuring our scope 3 emissions by 2025. And I actually think we'll be achieving that a little earlier, hopefully. And then, of course, energy use is tied to our greenhouse gas emissions, and also focusing on our where we can improve and increase our renewable energy portfolio. Looking at product responsibility, we're actually we just in the process of starting our first life cycle assessment, which is really interesting in the manufacturing space. If you're making products, it's really, why I find it so interesting is because it's really going to give us kind of a cradle to grave analysis of our product. We're going to choose one product category, our largest volume product category, and actually truly understand all of the impacts, all the way from the raw materials to the manufacturing or design and manufacturing to, distributing the product, to the use of the product, and then all the way through to end of life. And so I'm really interested in the information that we're going to get from that, especially because it's so easy to say, as an example, in the manufacturing space, that you need to have more recycled content in your products. Because what I didn't talk about is our products, the majority of our irrigation related products are made from, they're, like I mentioned, they're injection molded plastic. So it's made from resin, which is made from petroleum. And there's certainly not an unlimited supply of it. And of course, we're doing everything we can. And I think business are doing everything they can to reduce their reliance on it as well. Important to note, because as soon as I say plastic, people go, well, we shouldn't be using any plastic at all. But, we're not a single-use product. Our products typically last 15, 20, 25 years, depending on whether they're buried in the ground or not. And so this life cycle assessment is really going to help us better understand, does it truly make sense to use more recycled content in our products? Because that may actually increase our carbon footprint. And if that's doing that, then that's not actually helping us achieve our goal. And then, of course, on the waste side of things, as a manufacturer, we do have waste that comes from the manufacturing process. And so one, how do we minimize the amount of waste we have when we're in the manufacturing process? And two, how do we make sure that we find alternative uses for that waste. So alternative uses could be everything from, reusing some of it in our products, like I talked about, or it could be finding and soliciting partners that could use our scrap waste, our manufacturing waste, to make their products as well. And then last but not least is our focusing on our water use. And so we have a goal to reduce our water use 30% by 2030 from our 2019 baseline. And I think we'll get there well before 2030 and probably set a new goal from there as well. And so that is a little bit of an overview of our goals. And, from the reporting standpoint, what I want to do now is just show you our report and show you and give you an example of how we lay things out. And you've now gotten an understanding for what our goals are, what our priorities are. And I want to show you our report. And then I'm going to do that a little rather quickly because I've already gone through a lot of it with you. But then I'm going to just picked out one manufacturer that I thought could just show you an example of what their report looks like. And so bear with me while I change my screens here. Okay. Now I'm going to share the screen. So this is part of our corporate social responsibility page on our website. And I have not started. Here we go. Okay, there we go. Sorry about that. So this is part of our main page on our corporate social responsibility of our website. And again, you'll see the familiar things of the people, planet, and profit that I talked about. And you'll see some of these, these topics that you'll recognize as well from what I just shared with you on the last slide. So companies lay their CSR reports out differently. Some people have everything all on a website. Some people use a combination of a website and a traditional PDF report, which I'll show you ours in just a moment. And some people do a combination of both, which we're kind of doing both. And so on our website itself, if we go to a particular section, we're going to show what our goals are, which I've talked about. We're going to tell you usually you're going to see a company report on their progress, how they're doing against their goal, and then maybe some background information about that as well. And the one thing I want to be clear about is when companies report on their ESG, sustainability, corporate social responsibility efforts, generally they're the previous calendar year. So hence why you're looking right now at our 2021 corporate social responsibility report, because we're in the production process right now of our 2022 report. Nick, great question. Are LCAs usually performed in-house or outsourced? We are outsourcing it. And yeah, we found a great partner that specializes in doing LCAs. It's a pretty complex process. Again, we're just starting. And when I say complex, because there's a lot of data gathering, I mean, a significant amount of data gathering. And what I learned over the last couple of months as I was researching companies to hire to help us do our life cycle assessment is there's standards that are put in place on how to do life cycle assessment. So it's not some arbitrary thing that somebody's just determining what they want to do. And so, and part of what's driving that life cycle assessment is also being done because we are getting requests from customers, primarily overseas, not much in the US yet, but primarily overseas. And they're asking us on projects, especially if they're designing projects with our products or competitor products, they want to know what the carbon footprint of what the product is. And so what I find really interesting is at the moment, between the research that we did and the research that our consultant did, that we hired, the consulting company, there are no other life cycle assessments that have been published. And actually, I should back up and say the life cycle assessments done for the company, that's usually not publicly shared because there's usually proprietary information in there. But what is publicly shared is called an EPD. Here we are in the alphabet soup again, Environmental Product Declaration. And so we did research, our consultant did research, and there are no environmental product declarations from our industry that we've been able to find. So, but I think it's just a matter of time because again, we're getting requests, especially from outside the US. In fact, a lot of what's driving a lot of sustainability things right now seems to be coming from outside the US. When we're seeing that from packaging requirements to labeling requirements, a whole host of things, which I find interesting. And I know it's just a matter of time before we see more of that pressure here in the US as well. So great question, Nick. Thank you for asking that about LCAs. And so again, I'm not going to go through the entire section because I've kind of highlighted our goals, but you'll see some information about the goals, what our progress is, and a little bit of information that happened in the previous year. And then our actual report is put together here, kind of laid out in a similar fashion. Again, you should start to see some consistency, and then each of the sections dives into more detail. And so one of the things you'll find about sustainability reports, CSR reports, is especially as you get into all the disclosures and all the variety of different reporting frameworks, they can be quite long. Ours is 41 pages, which isn't that long in comparison. And what we tried to do again was talk about the individual sections, provide a little bit more detail. In our situation, we tried to actually we like to share stories as well on different things that are going on that reflect on the topic that we're talking about as well. And then the data typically is housed at the end of the report. And so I go back up to the beginning here. Typically, you'll see data housed at the back of the report is what's common. And so that's where you get into the nitty gritty, because not everybody wants to look through all the data necessarily, and I'm going to show you how we track all our data. I'm going to actually show you a live site that we use to track our data as part of our reporting software as well. And so you can see, again, from the report, and one of the things I think that's really important when it comes to reporting, and I know it's something that we focus on as well, is part of the sustainability reporting aspect is the idea of being transparent. And so it's also showing some things that maybe you haven't had success on, like there are goals that we're trying to achieve that maybe we're not making as much progress on it as we'd like. And so we talk about that in an honest fashion and say, hey, there's opportunities for improvement for sure. And I think that's really important, that you are being transparent about stuff and sharing, really where you are and being mindful of that. And these things become a challenge as well, to especially as you continue to grow a business. And the other thing that's interesting is as a private company, I mean, case in point, you'll see our demographic details about our organization, even money that we're sharing on our charitable giving. We don't have to disclose any of this information as a private company. We're not required to. We do it because it's part of our value of social responsibility. And I didn't talk about our values. I should have mentioned that at the beginning, but social responsibility is one of our values as a company. And that's really what's been driving this. As we celebrated our 42nd year in business as a private family-owned business, sustainability and corporate social responsibility started as really at the foundation of one of the Hunter family members, and it's Ann Hunter Wellborn, who the award actually, when we give out an award recognizing customers who are committed to sustainability, but really she's the founder of our focus around sustainability, and it's really her passion and interest in this and the rest of the Hunter family that continues to drive the projects that we do, that it drives our goals, it drives us to get better. And also something that I also really appreciate about the company, and I've worked for Hunter, it'll be 4 years in August, is we're open to sharing information and our experience and our stories and helping other companies. And willing to share information even with our competitors, other manufacturers in our space, because that's something that we believe in helping, the saying, a rising tide lifts all boats. We believe in helping our entire industry, the industries that we work in, get better in sustainability as well. So that's our report in a nutshell. Again, I'll put the website link so you can get back to our corporate page. But I wanted to just give you a little bit of an idea of kind of how it's laid out. And we typically, you'll see our next report we'll be producing will be coming out later this year. Our reports typically are launched in the summertime. They vary depending on companies. Some of them can launch them early in the year. I can tell you there's a lot of work that goes into putting a report together, from not only gathering the data, but then writing all the stories and getting all the content. And then of course, having it put together, in a marketable way that you can share it in a way that's engaging with customers and employees and so forth as well. So I want to jump over to Caterpillar, because I just picked them. The reason I chose Caterpillar, actually, originally I went down the thought of thinking of other manufacturers in San Diego, and I was looking through and I thought of the solar turbine manufacturing business that they have, because I travel a lot. So I'm always going to the airport in San Diego, and I see their corporate campus there, manufacturing campus right next to the airport. And so I kind of started looking up a little bit about them, and it landed me back on their parent company, which is Caterpillar. And I'm just going to share with you a couple components that are in their report, and you'll see some similarities again. Now, Caterpillar obviously is a public company. They put together an executive summary, which I really like, that talks kind of through the different processes, but you'll get an idea, like for their goals. You can see some similar goals around energy and emissions, around water, and waste. And you'll see they have a goal around remanufacturing, around employee health and safety, around customer safety as well. And so that's how they lay their goals out. And then again, they have focus areas as well around governance, energy and emissions, material procurement, remanufacturing, people, and then what they do in the community around philanthropy. And so, and you'll see when you look at their reporting, they report to GRI. So that's one thing that I didn't mention is you may have noticed when I talked about all the reporting frameworks, you may notice that we're not reporting to any of the reporting frameworks currently. And that is actually something that we are working towards in our report that will be coming out for 2022. Our last GRI report was in 2016. And again, before I was at Hunter, and for whatever reason was chosen not to continue reporting to the GRI standards after that. But we are bringing that GRI index back and GRI reporting standards back to our organization. And I can tell you, if you listen to that GRI webinar that was the ASCM put on, there's a lot that goes into that. There's a lot of data gathering. There's a lot of information. But for me, one of the reasons why we're going back to GRI is because we want to put ourselves on the same playing field as other companies that are doing sustainability and corporate social responsibility reporting. I think, and the best way to do that is use the most recognized standard. And so you can see here again that Caterpillar is reporting under the SASB index as well. And if you go look at their actual report itself, I was going to go here and do that. And so you'll see their report's about 71 pages long. Go back up here to the beginning of the report. But you'll see things laid out in a similar fashion. Again, there's the data, there's the variety of different sections. I like their executive summary. We're actually going to try to incorporate a little bit more of that into our reports as well going forward. And yeah, I mean, you can take a look through the report and you'll see a variety of things that they're doing and the things that they're focusing on and how they do their governance. And you'll see a lot of this is very specific to the GRI standards, especially the way they report out on things. And yeah, you can see some stuff that's in the report and the website. You know, one of the interesting things is because a lot of work goes into preparing these PDF reports is how many people actually read them. And that's something that we pay close attention to. Again, I think it varies by industry, especially if you are a publicly traded company and you do have requirements for reporting and your investors are actually looking towards you to see what you're doing around your sustainability goals, then I think there's a lot more focus on the reporting as well. In the industry that we work in, there are not as many manufacturers doing reports, although that is changing. Again, our publicly held manufacturing competitors we're starting to see them focus on sustainability reporting, and then even our publicly held customers, the distributors that we sell our products to, are also doing their corporate social responsibility and sustainability reporting as well. And so again, I think that's only going to increase without question. So a little bit of an overview, or not overview, a little bit of a review kind of how Caterpillar puts their report out. I want to go back and I'm going to pause my screen here and we're going to jump back into my presentation. Let's see if I can do that the right way. And let me share that screen. Okay. All right, you should still be able to see my screen, I think. Yep, looks like it. Okay, so how do you get started? If you want to start thinking about, putting a report together for your company, the first thing I can't recommend highly enough is don't do it yourself. Unless you happen to have in-house staff that understands how to do it, understands how to develop your framework on your reporting, help you with your goals, I suggest hiring a consultant, and that's what Hunter has done. And actually our consultant it continues to work with us to this day. In fact, she's very integral in helping us when we do our stakeholder surveys, when we reach, when we are developing our goals. She's also my eyes and ears to keep tabs on all the different reporting changes and things that are coming down the road, or the pipeline, so to speak. And, the image I have here about this curved road on the right-hand side really is truly what sustainability is all about. There's no linear line. There's no checklist. It is truly a journey. And so I think it's always important to keep that in mind, because it's so easy to get caught up on, like, you want to get everything done in a short amount of time, and recognizing that things take a lot of time as well. I talked about surveying your stakeholders so you understand what's material to your business. And that's probably the first thing that you're going to do as you kind of go down the road with your report. And then you're going to set goals, and you're going to set goals that are based on the material topics that you hear from your stakeholders that are important. And you're going to set goals that are not always easy goals to meet. They're going to cause you to stretch, and that's okay. And that's important to do as well. And then you're going to be reporting on your progress every year. And that's the purpose of doing the CSR report itself. I mentioned again about, I'd say don't greenwash. What I mean by that is make sure that you're being transparent and honest about how you're doing, and don't make things, it's easy to chalk things up to sustainability, to do it in a way that's so focused around marketing when there's really no truth behind it. And that's something that we're very mindful of as a company when we talk about the things that we're doing, that we're not just making marketing claims to say these great things when they're not necessarily accurate. And so that's the way I recommend you get started. But again, I would strongly recommend hiring a consultant. As you get started, like I mentioned, you're going to be looking at how you're going to keep track of all this data. And there is a lot of data, as you can imagine, because if you're setting all these goals, you're going to be tracking data, whether it's, greenhouse gas emissions, whether it's your energy use or your water use or your demographic data and so forth. And so I think having reporting software is really important. When I started at Hunter, all of our data was kept, where do you think? On spreadsheets, on different people's spreadsheets, all around the entire organization. And so trying to gather that data on an annual basis when you're trying to pull your report together can be a lot of work. And so looking for reporting software that helps you manage your strategies, helps you manage your data, provides analytics and reporting, and can also assist you with your stakeholder engagement as well. There's a variety of different reporting softwares out there, and that space is changing quickly. FigBytes is the company that we've been using. This is our third year that we've been working with FigBytes. And I certainly recommend them, and I'm happy to answer questions about, specifics about how I went about looking at and doing evaluations of the variety of different software platforms that are available. I'm definitely happy to answer questions about that, even offline here as well. But it's interesting to watch this space evolve. And so when you have data management, what you have is, and I am going to share another screen here, so bear with me. All right, so now you should be looking at a different screen. So this is one of our dashboards. I wanted to just share with you one of the dashboards that I put together for our executive team to kind of keep tabs on all of our CSR goals, and all the goals that you've seen me talk about as well. And so the nice thing about this data is it's all real-time data. And when I say real-time, it's real-time as far as when you're inputting the data. Now, in this instance, you're looking at our water usage, our corporate water usage, and that data is coming in from our utility bills on a monthly basis if it's our municipal water, or also a monthly basis in our campuses that use well water as well. And the nice thing about it is that you can very quickly get a snapshot of kind of how we're doing, and then you can analyze the data in a variety of different ways, whether it's specific to a particular campus. So now I just want to go look at our San Marcos campus and how many gallons of water have we used. And the reason you're not seeing 2022 data on there yet is we're still in the process of gathering it, although I do have some 2022 data that is on some of the other tabs. And if I want to get all the way down to a building level, I can go look at how much water did we use, on a particular building level? And so you can get very granular about that as well. And all this can be customizable and set up. If you're familiar with using things like Power BI and other types of reporting, this is kind of that graphical way of doing that. The nice thing about their software is it gives you that flexibility. So somebody, whether the data is being inputted manually, which some of it is manually, or in this case, with all of our utilities across the organization, they have a partnership with another company that has an API that actually pulls that utility data in every month. So I don't have to go back and enter all that stuff like I used to have to do. And so then you can create those variety of different graphs and the ways you want to look at it, whether it's by campus. If I'm looking at our energy data as an example, so now you can see energy data from a variety of different campuses that we have. And again, I only want to look at our energy that we're using in Claremont, Florida. So I can just go turn all the rest of these off and you can see how we're doing. Now you're noticing you'll see some data from 2022 in here as well. And obviously this isn't the trend that we want to see because it's going up, right? And that's the interesting balance in the sustainability space, is that as business grows and your manufacturing grows, your usage grows as well. And so you have to balance that with improving your efficiencies. And so that's what a lot of our work is focused on, is actually how do we improve our efficiencies? How do we install more efficient equipment? And yes, it's everything from LED light bulbs, which we've pretty much done at all of our campuses, but really focusing on what's using the most amount of energy in our campus as a whole. And then you can look at, our other different campuses here if we want to do that as well. Similarly, I can make these little filters, anything you want, but I've chosen the same thing by year, by campus, by building. Greenhouse gas emissions, again, we haven't done our calculations for 2022 yet, but interestingly enough, in our last data calculation we did in 2021, 81% of our greenhouse gas emissions as a company comes from the electricity that we purchase. So that's why it's important to reduce our energy usage. That's why it's also important to look at renewable energy as well. And then, we have our splitting out some of our different usage as well. So like our vehicle fleet across the US, we can see, where our greenhouse gas emissions are coming. Again, a small percentage comparatively. If you look at metric tons of carbon dioxide equivalent, you have 1,000 metric tons for the gas that we use in our vehicles versus 15,000, which is what's coming from the electricity that we purchase as well. And so again, all this information can be looked at and created on different ways. We have some solar generation right now. We're actually in the process of adding. Right now, we only have solar generation on our campus in San Marcos, but we're adding more to that this year and next year, and we'll be putting solar on our other two main manufacturing campuses in Florida and in Tijuana, Mexico in the future as well. And so again, it's nice to be able to keep track of all that. And so I wanted to just give you a little bit of a snapshot of the actual output of the data that comes from the software that we're using, FigBytes. Of course, on the back end is all the data entry stuff. And the really nice thing about a lot of these softwares is that and including FigBytes, is that they will also allow you to pull data out against frameworks. So for our GRI, we can pull data and do the analysis against the GRI framework, and as well as other frameworks as well. They have CDP, SASB, and some other ones as well that are part of the software platform. And again, I think this is a really important tool that's really important to help you be successful when you're doing your sustainability reporting. And so I'm going to go back here and should be back on the screen there. Great, I am. Let me just get the screen up here. I have a couple more things to talk about. I wanted to share with you some more resources as well. Get the right screen. Here we go. So some resources. This is by no means the end all be all, but a couple things on ESG reporting that I found that are helpful. A company called Workiva, they actually put out a great ebook, which is what's up there. And then Ernst & Young have some great information and some really good webinars around sustainability and ESG reporting. I highlight the partner that helped us with our first CSR report way back over 10 years ago. And they're also a San Diego-based company called Think Parallax. And they are fantastic for helping with reporting and developing sustainability strategy. And then similarly, I talked to you about our consultant that we've been using. Again, I believe in transparency and sharing information and things that have helped us. And so this is the name of our consultant is this through Sustainability Next. And I promised that I would share more resources with you. So I'm going to just put website links to all those in the chat here. So coming up now are some more website links for you to use in the future. You can copy those and look at them at your leisure. So these are just a few resources. One question that I often get asked is if I want to learn more about sustainability. Let me see, I got a question here. All right, so Nick, you asked about improving efficiencies or many of our water energy goals framed on a per unit produced basis. Excellent question. We are in the process right now, and in our 2022 report, we are normalizing that because that's really important. So we are normalizing it on as another way to show our improvement in efficiencies. So whether it's gallons per water per unit produced or kilowatt hours or greenhouse gas emissions per unit produced. And so, yeah, we are coming up with those metrics right now and kind of doing the final kind of calculations on that. And we'll start reporting out on that. And I think that's really important because that's where we're going to show how our operational efficiencies are improving, even if our production and our demand is going up. So great question on that. Okay. And so just some education opportunities. Sandy talked about some of my background. Arizona State University, they're the first school in the nation with a sustainability degree, undergraduate degree. I participated in this. So they have undergraduate and graduate degrees. The program I participated in is called the Executive Master of Sustainability Leadership. So it's a master's program, but it's a executive program because it's actually primarily online with a couple in-person meetings. And they have a couple different iterations of that. I'm obviously I'm a little biased because I do believe I'm supportive of ASU, probably because it really changed my whole career as it relates to sustainability. The stuff that I had and the opportunity that I had to learn and the people that I got to learn from, both the instructors and the students that were in my class, were really helpful. UCLA has a great sustainability certificate program through UCLA Extension. Again, that's online. They also have an in-person version of that. I just started teaching in that this semester or this quarter. And I'm really impressed with the quality of students in the program. It's a relatively inexpensive program compared to the master's program at ASU. And by no means are these all only programs. I'm just telling you the ones that I have experience with as well. The other one is that I found, and I don't have a lot of experience, but I was just doing a little bit of research, but the ISCEA stands for the International Supply Chain Education Alliance, and they have a certified sustainable supply chain professional. So I just, and I'll share with you the links to their program as well from a sustainability educational opportunity. And finally, I wanted to share with you Green Biz, which has a ton of great resources. They put out wonderful newsletters. They have several annual conferences, one just called Green Biz. That's where I actually learned about Arizona State University when I was just starting in my career on sustainability. And it's also where I had a chance to network and meet sustainability professionals from small companies all the way up to Fortune 100 companies and learn from them and kind of what they've experienced in their journey in sustainability as well. But they have a lot of great conferences now. So they have a conference on the circular economy every year. They have a conference on green finance, a conference on climate tech, a conference on net zero, and a conference on the electrification they call Electrify. So again, I can't recommend Green Biz enough because they've got a lot of great resources. I'm going to share with you now in the chat my final bit of information that hopefully will be helpful for you. So here's some of those links to the organizations I just talked about as well. And so with that, I leave you with my contact information, and there's plenty of time for questions or dialogue around the things that we've talked about. Feel free to reach out if you'd like any more information on the things I've talked about tonight, want some information on, or if you want a personal demo on our sustainability software, I'm happy to go through it and show you stuff in more detail as well. Yeah, I think the thing that I want to impress upon you as well in the sustainability profession, and this is the thing I share with my students in both of the programs that I've taught in, is the fact that we're all willing to help each other. And that's something that I think is really great, whether you're competing against each other or whether you're just trying to share experiences on things that you did, maybe that are important, that you want to share with other people so they don't make the same mistakes, or you want to share some of your successes, so they can, so other people can, try to look at how they can apply those ideas and successes to their business as well. And I have talked a lot, and so there's an opportunity for questions. If you want to unmute yourself, if you want to type it in the chat. And Sandy and Preston, feel free to jump back on if you would like, and I can stop sharing my screen even if.
Yeah, this is Preston. I had a kind of the light bulb went on about 3 weeks ago, and most of the emphasis in our SIG has been on the E part, the environmental part, and not very much about the S and the G. And I also, over the last,
I'll start it again since I stopped it. Sorry, Preston.
okay, I'm the very beginning of the baby boomers, right? I'm not even the baby boomer generation. I'm the silent generation, the one that came before it. And with the baby boom generation retiring and exiting the workforce, and the millennials being a smaller population than the baby boomers, and of course the Z generation, which is the one that will really start adding lots of value 20 years from now, being large, but we have this narrowing of individuals who can contribute to the economy. The workforce is actually shrinking compared to the baby boomer time. And we see shortages right now, but I very seldom see the press or anyone acknowledge that it's a demographic situation and the shortages will not go away. And that would mean that if it's no longer necessarily an employer's market, it's an employee's market or a potential employee's market. So the S, that this community, many of them will now start to evaluate companies based on their social programs and the way they view individuals and all kinds of stakeholders. So what's your take on all that? Am I reading the tea leaves correctly, or am I off base?
You're 1,000% correct from my perspective. And I say that because another thing that came from the pandemic is, well, first of all, people want to work, and we see this a lot in the younger generation, for sure, in the younger generations. But the days of just working for a company that makes money, I mean, yeah, you have to make money, obviously, to be able to keep the business sustainable, but people want to work for a company that have a purpose greater than this just making money. And what are companies doing to contribute back on a positive way to society? And I see that in our recruiting aspects. I see that in the conferences that I go to and the different industry associations that I'm on, and even some of the boards that I'm involved with as well. And yes, I mean, I think the social thing is so important, and it's really not an option anymore in my mind. And especially when you weave in the whole diversity, equity, and inclusion component as well, and the things that have happened over the last couple of years during the pandemic, from some of the things, unfortunately, that have happened from society standpoint. I mean, yeah, you can't ignore the social aspect of sustainability, and the environmental thing you can't ignore either. But I think it's important to make sure that you're right, and I think when it's an employee's market, employees can be choosy about where they want to work. And I see that that employees are really focused on that. And we see, being one of the few companies in our industry that's promoting sustainability and talking about it, and it's one of our core values around sustainability and CSR. I see employees mentioning that all the time. It's one of the reasons why they want to come work for us, because of that. And so I think it's a selling tool as well. And I think it can be as well. And so, yes, I'm glad you brought that up, Preston.
Yeah, good. It's good to hear that from someone who's an expert in the field that I was correct for once.
Well, I wouldn't call myself an expert. I'm still learning. I learn every day. I learn from our employees every day. I learn from my peers every day. That's one of the things why I love teaching. And it's amazing learning from my students that are some also in the sustainability profession and others that are trying to get into the sustainability profession. Is there's just so much to learn in this space, and it is changing so fast. And I guess I failed to mention, in our organization, it's myself and one other person that is managing all of this. So between all the goals that you see, and that's why the other thing that I think is really important when you're focusing in the sustainability space is, at the end of the day, you have to involve all the employees in the company. It's not, it's easy because, yes, I'm the person that I guess is has the title, but I can't make all this stuff happen on my own. I don't make all this stuff happen on my own. I rely on so many people across the organization. And that's one of my biggest goals. My biggest professional goals in our organization is how to get every employee to understand how they contribute to our success around sustainability. And that it's not just, oh yeah, Warren's got that taken care of. Because I can tell you, I go to meetings, and this happened a lot in my previous company too. And somebody passes out a stack of paper, and the first thing they do is, oh, that's not sustainable. Yeah, people get all up in arms about some of that stuff. And or, well, why isn't this coming out of Warren's budget to pay for all these crazy ideas that he has about trying to, reduce our packaging and things like that? I mean, it takes the entire organization to working together to be successful.
Great.
Yeah, I have some comments and a question for you, Warren.
Sure.
I enjoyed your presentation, so thank you very much for all that. Hunter Industries, I actually taught there on site about 15 years ago.
Really?
I taught, I don't remember, something to do with APICS, ASCM, either the CPIM program or the Operations Resource Management program, which we were running at the time through Cal State San Marcos. I was so intrigued with the people and the products that I bought a sprinkler system. I hope you don't mind. It's still working here.
I'm glad to hear it's still working.
Also, for everybody on who's listening in, we do have an eco-sustainability website. I presume you're all familiar with that. Otherwise, you probably wouldn't be here. Part of that website, we have a curated section, and we already have a section on green biz, one of the areas that Warren mentioned. So check that out. We have some website links there and a couple of documents. In fact, we have a whole section on curated materials that you should check out. One question, I had two questions. My first one, you mentioned fig bites. I was really intrigued with your with those charts and graphs that you showed. Before I retired, I worked at CGI, which is a worldwide international consulting firm. One of my largest customers was the city of San Diego. In particular, I did a lot of major projects with environmental services there. One project, in fact, my most favorite project while I was there, was implementing a system similar to fig bites. It was called Energy Cap. I was wondering if you were familiar with that at all.
I'm not. No, I'm not.
Energy Cap is a off-the-shelf system that we configured for the city of San Diego, and it allowed us to measure electrical and gas consumption from SDG&E, not only across all the 20-something departments, but even down to the building level. So you can see who's using how much electricity and gas from SDG&E over time, over the seasons, and implement what the idea was to get down to the building level to implement some means of saving energy. Because obviously everyone knows that energy is getting more and more expensive. That was a highly successful project. And I imagine it's saving the city of San Diego, hundreds of thousands a year, if not more. I did have a question going back, and this is the one I emailed you yesterday, about people, planet, and profit, and whoever contributed peace and partnership as well. Thanks for doing that. That's a great addition. People, planet, and profit. Obviously, that's all great information, no question about it. And if I'm looking for a job, I would be interested to see, who is doing well on the social side of things. But if I'm an investor, I'm wondering if the tables are somewhat turned. If I have company A that's making a 10% ROI, but is following ESG regulations, company B that's making 20% ROI and hasn't done any ESG, as an investor, I might be tempted just to go with company B because of the ROI alone. Do you have any comments about that and how we can motivate people to consider ESG metrics in their investment choices?
I mean, I think with large companies like, and large financial companies like BlackRock, I mean, I think they're prioritizing, a lot of companies are prioritizing their investments around, ESG performance of companies. So I feel like on the public sector side, I feel like it's becoming less and less an option, but I don't think we're there yet. You're right. But I feel, and the other thing too, is that to that point is a couple things. One, there's more and more data out there that proves that businesses that are embracing sustainability, whether it's the environmental stuff, the social stuff, and of course the governance stuff, which of course is important. We didn't talk a lot about governance necessarily, but there's plenty of data around there that shows that it actually allows businesses to be more profitable, sales increase. I mean, plenty of information around that. And so I think it's just, I think some of it is just having to rethink the way we do things and to rethink, the traditional business model as well. And I think that the pressure is going to be on businesses to perform. And to your other point about kind of the software and what you were talking about as well, is that whole measurement piece is what's really important. This saying about you can't manage what you don't measure is so important. And if you look at where technology is, and we're not there for sure yet. In fact, I was just having this discussion with some of our manufacturing engineers last week about, will we get to the point where we can put metering on every single one of our injection molded machines as an example, and then, to the question, I think, Nick, that you asked about, how we are reporting on and also looking at, our usage per units produced. When we get down to that level, I think it's going to be really interesting when we get down to that level. We're not there yet, and I don't think we'll be there for a while, but I think we will. It's definitely something we have to continue to take a look at, because and doing business in San Diego County and having the most expensive electricity costs in the country.
Yeah.
And then seeing the things that we saw with natural gas, of course. Now, I didn't talk about the fact that we generate our own electricity on our campus, or we have the capacity to do that as well. We have a cogen capability, and we do that, and it is through natural gas, which is not necessarily, is that the best? Is that the best way to generate energy? No, but it's actually cleaner than the energy that we get that we purchase from the utility. And so, but I think, the future of that will be battery storage for us. The future of that will be looking at fuel cells. We did a cursory look at it. I didn't talk about our climate action plan, but that's really what helped us come up with our greenhouse gas reduction goals, because we are following kind of the science-based targets, although we did not choose to certify our program, but the consultant that we used that did our helped us put our climate action plan together, followed those the methods and the standards around that. But anyway, I went off on the environmental thing again. But yeah, to your point, Sandy, yeah, I would say that I think it's becoming less and less optional on the investor side for the businesses to not be focusing on that. And it's going to just take more people being bold about it as well.
Thank you, Warren. By the way, with your permission, I would very much like to take some of the documents you showed tonight and post them in our curated section on our website.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much. Anybody else?
Yeah, it's Preston. I just had a comment that I thought was kind of interesting. There's been a backlash against ESG funds. That is, funds that really want to invest in companies that are ESG compliant and really trying to make good things happen. And in certain states, those that tend to be states that house and have connections with, I'll call it polluters today, the established firms that are, oil or whatever they may be. And so you would think, well, now there's discrimination, they're encouraging and trying to make it difficult, and criticizing ESG funds. And then someone did an analysis of the impact of that, and they said, well, in the states in which this is occurring, they will actually spend more money on interest rates they will spend more money on their lending than states that have no discrimination against ESG funds. I don't know if I made sense with that. I wish I had actually saved that URL, et cetera, but it was an analysis from a respected organization that may have been Financial Times, whatever. But that is interesting because here they are, they're driving away the money that's reasonably affordable. And now when they go to borrow at the corporate level, they're going to pay more
It's
for
going to
that
cost
money.
more money. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's interesting.
Yeah.
I had one other resource that I didn't have in my presentation from a climate change education standpoint that I came across. And Sandy, this would be a good one to put up on our site as well. It's called the Carbon Almanac. I just discovered it through a colleague of mine who shared it with me. And they've got a lot of great information on there. It's a lot of science-based information about climate change. And they even have they have a newsletter they send out every day, a little tidbit about climate change and the ways you can have an impact to reduce it. And one of the things they shared 2 weekends ago, I got an email from them. And by the way, Seth Godin is one of the people that's behind it, if you're familiar with Seth Godin. But they have a whole LinkedIn learning module that they have on LinkedIn now that's free. And it literally is it's like a 1.5 minute videos about very specific topics around climate change, to the point where if people are looking for ways to come up with information to share with employees and make it in something that's digestible. And they have a book out. I just ordered the book. I haven't read it yet, but I'll put that in the chat as well. This would be a great resource to put on. I was really surprised that I had never heard of it until the last couple of weeks.
Very good. I see you put it in chat. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah.
I don't have a question, but I just wanted to say thank you for presenting, and it was super helpful to have Hunter Industries as an example going through everything. So thank you. And sorry for interrupting with the questions.
You're not interrupting it. No, I specifically wanted people to ask questions throughout, so you didn't interrupt at all. I appreciate it.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for your questions, and nice to meet you as well, Nick.
You too.
You're on mute, Preston.
Oh, I'm on mute. Is it time to wrap it up?
Any other questions? Comments?
Oh,
Thanks,
thank you.
Lisa.
All right, should we wrap it up then? All right, well, I guess I'll wrap it up then. Thank you everyone for joining us. Thank you, Warren, an outstanding presentation, and enjoyed all of your answers and discussions. We do have a couple of upcoming events, but I don't think we have any dates for them. Let me check. Here we go. First of all, everyone should be familiar with our website, the eco-sustainability website, sandiego.ascm.org/eco curated. And I think that Amanda put the link in the chat already. You go to eco-sustainability, we have events, coming up events. We have the curated section, which I mentioned already, our bios, in case you want to learn more about us, who are advisors to the SIG. But our upcoming events, we don't have dates yet. The next event is going to be an introduction to the Carbon Disclosure Project, or CDP. And after that, we have eco-sustainability leadership. And Preston, I'll ask you if you have any additional information about those. Before I hand that off, also, we have previous presentations recorded, and they're all found on our website. So we have one from last November, October, and September, 2 in September, and going back even further last year. So if you're new to our SIG and our presentations, you can look at everything we've done previously and get caught up.
All right. There are two that aren't listed yet that we're waiting on the data, the information to put it out on the web itself, the specifics, the abstract and the bios of the speakers, but we'll have one on, one is in May on tying all things together. Right now, there's a lot of reporting standards. I think Warren went over those briefly. but the individual, Gwen, who did our webinar on GRI will present again, and she's going to help everyone see all the linkages and how they complement each other. So she's going to really connect the dots and make the picture clear. And that will be in May, and in April next month. We already have it scheduled, but we haven't put it out because we're waiting for the details from the presenter. ASCM Corporate. Bear in mind, our SIG is at the chapter level. Corporate's coming out with its first sustainability course, and it's going to be something like a 12 to 16-hour course. And the person championing that, who happens to be in Brazil, will be giving a presentation on April 18th. And I think the May presentation on connecting the dots of all the standards for reporting will be on May 7th. But again, that'll be hitting the website pretty soon as we get the details. These other mentions we made about CDP, et cetera, those are placeholders while we go out and try to recruit a qualified presenter instructor. So those that are not yet published but agreed to are May, all these standards, connecting the dots, and in April it will be on the new course. It'll be a foundational course, and it will have a certificate, and it will be instructor led on sustainability. More information to follow.
All right, anything else? If not, let's wrap it up. Thank you, everyone, once again. Thank you, Warren. Have a great evening, and we'll see you all next time.
Yep.
Thanks.
Thank you. Appreciate
Thank
the
you.
opportunity.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.